Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. Monday morning, and I was just gone out of state over the weekend, and this video is about traveling with a Tesla, what it's like, just some advice that I have for you. I've got over 61,000 miles on this car so far, and in the last 10 days I've put 2,500 miles on my car. A week ago, about 10 days ago, we drove from northern Illinois into Ohio, just outside of Cleveland, for a wedding. And then this last weekend, we drove the other direction, west, to Nebraska for unfortunately a funeral of a newborn infant. That was a rough thing. But we used the Tesla for both trips. Part of that is because I've got so many free supercharging miles. I had 86,000 free supercharging miles to use up due to the referral program. Thanks guys for using my referral code. So we used the car. Now I've traveled a lot out of state over the last year and a half that I've owned this car, and I've used the Supercharger network quite extensively. Now the bulk of the driving is done just locally. I charge at home and then drive during the day, charge at home again. But, I don't know, once every couple months or so, we use the Supercharging network to travel out of state. And we just happen to have used it 2 weekends in a row. And I wanted to give you guys my my experience doing that, because I had a couple things that came to mind that were worth noting. Now, I shared a little bit of this in one of my previous videos, so I apologize for those of you that watch all my videos. A little bit of this will be repetition, but I wanted to make one succinct video on just some basic advice on traveling with a Tesla. Now, if you've never traveled and used the Supercharging network, this is going to be useful information for you. So right off the bat, to start, I'd like to say that if you've never used the Supercharging network, research and find the nearest supercharger to you, drive to it, and plug in, just to make absolutely sure that the Supercharger network is going to work for you. I bring this up because I'd hate to see you drive 250 miles away, way too far away to get back, plug in, only to find that for whatever reason there's some issue with your account that won't allow it to supercharge. So that was one thing that I did. There happens to be a supercharger. It's a little ways away from me, but I had a service call for my business that was somewhat nearby that charger. So I stopped and plugged in, put 50 cents of electricity in the car just to verify that it would work and that it would bill my credit card appropriately and all that. And then once I did that, it alleviated some of my anxiety about traveling and using superchargers. But it is still a little bit of a nerve-wracking experience. So a couple of things experiences that I've had that I think are important for you to realize. Number one, supercharging etiquette. When you get to a supercharger, don't plug right next to somebody. Generally speaking, you're going to have two superchargers, two charging lines per charging assembly, and so what will happen, if you look, you'll see 1A and 1B, 2A, 2B listed at the bottom of the chargers. There'll be a little circle and it'll say 1A, 2A. I've even seen A, B, and C where there's 3 of them sharing one charger. So what you want to do, if you see a car plugged in, most of them are one charger are for 2 cords side by side. Now, not all of them are this way, that's why they're numbered, but the vast majority of them are this way. And that you want to make sure that if someone is plugged into a number 1, say 1A, don't plug into 1B. What you're definitely going to want to do is plug into 2A or 2B. You want to stay at least 1 stall away, because if you plug right next to somebody and you're sharing the same charger, then you will get slower charging than that individual. They plugged in first and you will get radically slower charging. So if you go to a supercharger and you see there's 6 stalls and 3 cars there, you'll notice that they've automatically skipped stalls. It's just something that you learn owning a Tesla, and it's etiquette. Now, obviously, if you've got a 6 stall charger and there's 4 cars there, or 3 or 4 cars there, you're gonna have to park next to somebody. There's no way around it. But recognize you're gonna get 25 to 35 kilowatts of charging until the person parked next to you moves, and then your charge will speed up. So we encountered that on our way back from Nebraska this last weekend. And that brings me to my next bit of advice, and that is to when you set your plan your trip, the Tesla navigation will route you through superchargers, assuming you're not going to make it to your destination on the charge you currently have. And what you want to do is, let's say it in our case, it showed 2 separate superchargers that it wanted us to stop at. One for 25 minutes, one for 30 minutes. So we researched them both. And one of those chargers was, it was an 8-stall charger, and it said 2 of 8 stalls available. And then later we checked it again, and it said 1 of 8 stalls available. It was a busy supercharger. So what we did is we researched other chargers along that line, and found that there was another charger like 30 miles earlier that was 8 stalls, and it said 8 of 8 available. Later in the day it said 7 of 8 available. It was just rarely used supercharger. So what we did is we altered our route to go to that charger with fewer stalls being used. Also, the Tesla, the nav screen will show you how many kilowatts it's capable of charging at. Now, it won't tell you if there's a problem and it's limited to 30 kilowatts or whatever, but it'll tell you, is this a 120 kilowatt charger, or is this a 150 kilowatt charger? So that's nice to know. It will also tell you if there's food amenities there. Now, it won't tell you what those amenities are. You're going to have to Google it then. And it's worth doing a little bit of research on this. So in our case, what we did is as we were driving, I told the car to route to the other supercharger that had more available stalls, because we knew it would charge faster. And once we were routed there, my wife took her phone, Googled that particular supercharger, and then with the words nearby restaurants or nearby amenities, and she got a list, and it said, oh, this supercharger nearby is Moe's Mexican Grill, and it was at a Hy-Vee. So there was the Hy-Vee Cafe, Eat-In Cafe, and then Moe's Mexican Grill, and there were a couple other things that were nearby. So that way we knew, oh, well, these are the food options there. Some superchargers are just at businesses that really would have no interest. In fact, we stopped at one supercharger that was at a gas station, which I find interesting, that superchargers are also located at times in gas station parking lots. But when we got there, the gas station was closed, the little food mart was closed, the gas pumps were plywooded around, and I thought, oh boy, I hope the supercharger works. And the supercharger worked just fine, but that meant there was absolutely nothing to do there. If it were summertime, we'd go for a walk, but it was cold out, so just forced to sit there in the car and wait for it to charge. Now, it's nice we have Netflix and whatever on our, on the screen now due to the latest software update, but still, there were no amenities there at all. In fact, what was listed was a gas station mart, but it was closed. So it basically, to boil this down, I would say, research the superchargers that Tesla shows you to stop at. And I know there are apps, a Better Trip Planner I think is one of them, and that routes things a little bit better than Tesla's own software. But I've never used those myself. I just use Tesla's nav. It works fine. You just have to understand some of these things. So again, make absolutely sure that the superchargers you're going to are going to suit your needs. Also, another piece of advice for you is the Tesla nav is assuming that you're going to be driving at the speed limit and that you have moderate temperatures. So it may tell you, oh, well, your first charging stop is in 265 miles and you should arrive with 14% state of charge. Well, the problem is, if the flow of traffic is going 6 miles over the speed limit or whatever, and you're going with the flow of traffic, you're not going to have 14% when you arrive. And if the weather is a little bit cold, you're also not going to have 14% when you arrive. If it's raining and you're driving through rain, you end up with far less range. So again, you're going to have less when you arrive. If you're either using the heat in the car or you're using the air conditioning, you're going to have less range when you arrive. So one of the things that I do is when I stop to charge, it may say 25 minutes to continue on your trip, but it's just trying to get you to the point where you're going to arrive with 14 or 15% charge at your next charging stop. I don't like doing that. I like to charge to the point where I know that I'm going to have 25% state of charge when I arrive at my next stop. And you can tell that by going into this trip graph here. It'll give you the if you start driving for a bit, it'll give you this estimated range. But if you're not driving at all, you can also look at your previous consumption and see what your projected range is, and then double check and see what the car assumes that your range is going to be, and you can adjust your charging accordingly. So we generally will, I don't want to call it overcharge, that's a bad term, but we will charge at every time we stop at a supercharger, we charge higher than Tesla recommends to get to our next charging stop, because it, again, usually it's an optimistic estimate, and you're going to arrive actually with less range than it's telling you. But number two, even if you do show up, which I've had this happen where I show up and, oh, I've got exactly the range it was saying, or 1 or 2% more than the software said I'd have when I arrived. Maybe the wind was at my back or something. But it's still, if you charge higher, you cannot worry about it and just drive. Otherwise, you will end up with some range anxiety. If you're anything like me, you're driving and you go, well, it said I'd have 14%. So you check your energy graph here and you go, oh, wow, now it's saying I'm going to show up with 9%. 15, 20 miles further down the road, you check, wow, now it's saying I'm going to show up with 6%. And then before you know it, you have a thing comes up on the screen that says, keep speed below certain miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, whatever, to make it to your destination. So in order to prevent that, again, charge higher than Tesla wants you to charge. Another thing, when you get to a charger, let's say you get there, there's 8 stalls, there's only 2 cars there. So you park one space away from another car, so you know you're not sharing a charger. So you plug in. Don't just plug in and walk away. I actually did this the week ago when we were out of state. Plugged in, saw that it started charging, we walked away from the car. We went into the Meijer department store, started walking around, and my wife was shopping for a couple things. I checked the app, and it was charging at 26 kilowatts. What? It was a 150 kilowatt charger, and it was stuck at 26 kilowatts. And it was quite a walk, and it was cold and windy, so I had to leave the store, walk all the way back across the parking lot, get in the car, unplug, move to a different stall, plug back in, and then I got the 150 kilowatts. It was like 147 kilowatts of charging at that point. Well, by then I had killed 20 minutes. The car could have been just about charged by then. But instead, I didn't think. So what I tell people to do now is plug into the supercharger, get in the car, sit down. It'll take about 60 seconds or so. It'll say starting to charge, and you'll see it'll say 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatts, 4, 8, 32, and it'll just start climbing, and wait till it levels off to know roughly what your charging rate is, because you may plug in and find that you're stuck at 26 to 34 kilowatts, and that's usually because there's a problem with that charger, or you parked too close to somebody else and you're sharing their charger. So again, before you leave the car, make sure that the charging, go into the charging page and make sure that it's charging plenty fast for you. So that's another thing. I would say another important item, be patient. Give yourself extra time. Now, a lot of people will argue that owning a Tesla and traveling state to state with it really doesn't take any more time than traveling with a gas car. That is not true. That is a Tesla fanboy that's being overly optimistic and trying to just sell you on the car. If you drive state to state with a Tesla, hear me, it is going to take you more time than a gas car. It just is. And anyone that disagrees with you has never traveled state to state in a Tesla. So I'm just being straight with you on that. Now, don't everybody every Tesla fanboy attack me for this. I'm not saying you shouldn't travel with a Tesla. In fact, the reverse, I'm going to argue the reverse. Traveling with a Tesla is awesome. For me, it's free because I have a mountain of free supercharging miles. But even if I were paying for it, which I did early on before I had referrals, it was still far, far cheaper. It was about 1/4 of the price of traveling in my wife's car my wife's Ford Fusion that gets 26 miles to the gallon. It was about a fourth the cost, maybe a third the cost to travel in this car versus hers. So even if you're paying for supercharging, it is far cheaper to travel in a Tesla than a gas car. But for me, again, my charging is free. So obviously it's a no-brainer to travel in this car. But even if everything goes perfectly, we had one trip, our trip heading east into Ohio, we had all kinds of problems. We had a supercharger that didn't want to work. We had to change stalls. We also, we were, I guess, bucking against the wind. It was also raining. We had the heat on. The range was horrific. We should have only had to stop once, twice maybe, but really only once as a need. We had to stop 3 times. We actually stopped 4, but we had to stop 3 times. It's like our range was horrific. And the superchargers were not in convenient places based on the route we were going. I mean, it was just, it was rough. But most often traveling isn't that way. Normally you travel and you go, oh, there's superchargers along the way, the amenities are good, the charging works fine. But even if everything is perfect, it's going to take you more time. However, that extra time, what we do is we'll leave a little earlier than we would have had we been driving a gas car, and we just recognize the fact that we're going to have to stop and charge. But that gives you the opportunity to get out of the car, stretch your legs, to walk around, and to not be in such a hurry. And now the first couple times my wife and I traveled out of state with this car, she didn't like it. We're stopping and she's like, I would rather just be able to gas up and be on the road. So I looked at her, I said, yeah, and it's going to be $40 to gas up, or $45 or whatever. I said, in that, you know, come on, give me a break. I mean, she was unhappy with the whole charging process the first couple times we traveled in this car. Now, she's like, well, we're obviously taking the Tesla out of state this weekend, and, you know, whatever. And so she'll ask, so where are we stopping to charge? Oh, well, the first one is in, you know, it was Altoona, Iowa was the first one that we stopped at on our second stop on our trip out this weekend. And she goes, okay, so she's Googling what to do in Altoona. It turns out my daughter had a friend there from college. Our daughter was traveling with us, so we stopped to visit her, and my wife was just all excited. And so now when we travel with this car, my wife is not unhappy about the charging stops. She looks forward to them. She'll say, so how long do we need to charge? I'll say, well, it says 25 minutes, so we'll charge for 35 so we have some extra range. She's like, okay, so you want to walk around the store? You know, so we'll walk around the store, and we got some Christmas shopping done while we were gone, and we bought a little bit of food for the road. It was wonderful. And we had a chance to just stretch our legs. We both sort of compete for a number of steps on our watches, you know, who can get the most steps in a day. So we were able to add to our walking. And it became an enjoyable time, and it eliminates the whole, come on, let's gas up, everyone use the bathroom, let's go, 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 we want to get on the road. Well, and that was the way we traveled in a gas car. The fact that you have to stop to charge in a Tesla eliminates that. So that's actually been great. Now, if we're going to be meeting people at a given destination, we'll just leave earlier than them and recognize that they're going to have different stops than we are and whatever. But you know what? We have, in the last, let's see here, in these 2 trips, traveling east for the wedding and west for the funeral, I did the math last night, we saved $219 and like 13 cents or something. Basically, $220 we saved in gas by using this car. Now, we probably spent an hour and a half more time in all that traveling, but saving $220 makes that hour and a half worthwhile. I mean, that's some really good financial benefit. And this car is most likely going to outlast any gas car we'd ever have. So we're not going to drive our BMW. That's a weekend car. We want to keep the miles off that and just enjoy it when the weather permits. My wife's Ford Fusion, well, I mean, it's fine, but it's already got 80-some thousand miles on it. And again, it will use gas. A gas car is less reliable. Every mile on a gas car is harder on the equipment in that car than a mile of use on an electric car. So, and with this car, I don't want to say I'm trying to load miles on it, but this car was purchased with the sole purpose of piling as many miles on it as possible. I use it for my business. So this is the obvious choice for us. And now, all that being said, yes, Teslas are expensive, and it's not that traveling with this car is going to offset the added cost. Teslas are expensive, I get it. But if you're going to be buying a nice, relatively high-end car to enjoy, you may as well get some financial benefit and save some money. But there's other things too. No oil changes. I keep saying I'm not an environmentalist, but I do recognize that, hey, if you're going to be using a vehicle, it's better to not pollute if you can. I mean, this car was charged, and we use coal in our area is what's used for the electric grid. So it's still not emissions free, but it's less emissions to operate this car than a gas car. So you've got all those benefits. This car is very quiet and smooth on the road. Autopilot is awesome. So all those things play in. But using the Supercharger network is a unique experience. Also, I will say that more often than not, when you stop at a Tesla Supercharger, it's going to be a little bit of a distance away from whatever building you're going to. So if the weather's cold, just plan appropriately. Bring a hat, because you're probably going to be walking to get to the building. Most chargers in our area are at Hy-Vee department stores, and they usually have the charger really far away from the department store. So that's another bit of advice for you. I would say that Tesla Superchargers, all of the Superchargers I've been at have been very clean, very well maintained. A couple of them haven't worked. But I mean, the parking lot, you go to a gas station, and not all gas stations, but most of them I've been to are kind of filthy. There's cigarette butts all over the ground. Why people are smoking while gassing up, I don't have a clue. But I've noticed this. It's just kind of the way it is when you gas up. At Superchargers, that's not the case. I don't know if Tesla maintains the Superchargers and the parking lot around them better than most gas station owners do, or I don't know. I don't want to say that Tesla owners are a better breed of people than those driving gas cars. That sounds arrogant. But for whatever reason, you get out of a Tesla, look down. There probably aren't going to be any cigarette butts and trash all over the ground at a Supercharger, but there will be at a gas station. So it's just a nicer experience. You get out of the car, there aren't any gas fumes to smell. You avoid all of the traffic in and out. It's a more serene experience at a Supercharger. You get out, there's one or two other cars there. Most likely the people aren't there at their car. They plugged in and walked away. So there's nobody there. If there is, they generally keep to themselves, or they're going to be friendly. You don't have that whole cars driving in and out from gas pumps and people walking in and out with their big Slurpee from the store and the speaker, shop today, and there's, we have 20% off 2 liters of Coke or whatever. All that stuff that's happening at a normal gas station is not present at a Tesla Supercharger. You pull in, you back in, it's serene. I mean, there's a couple cars parked there, there's nothing else going on. You plug your car in, there's no gas fumes. It's just a nicer experience than using a gas station. And this is one of the things that my wife appreciates about it. Now, we have been at 2 Superchargers that seemed a little sketchy, but that was only because they were behind a building, so you kind of pull around, but they were well lit, and again, well maintained, well kept grounds around them. So anyway, that's sort of my experience, my advice, and that for those that haven't done any supercharging yet and are a little bit nervous about it. So if you have any questions about it, go ahead and leave the questions in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to address them. If I've got enough questions, I'll go ahead and shoot another video answering those questions. So thanks a lot, guys. Have yourselves a wonderful day. I have a bunch of machine parts for the adjustable screen mount that will be arriving, that are here. I have to drive. They were dropped off at another business because I was out of town, so I have to stop there to pick them up. And so I'll be shipping, I think 65% of all pending orders will be shipped this week. For those that are curious about my steering wheel, this is not just an eBay steering wheel cover. I actually had it professionally reupholstered. They pulled off the leather and reupholstered it. So that's that. I'm willing to sell this wheel if you're interested. The dash, this is not a Tesla accessory. I just brought that dash panel into a local upholstery shop and had them wrap it in Alcantara. It cost me $200 in case you're wondering. So every single video people ask me about these things, so I wanted to bring it up. If you have an interest in a screen mount, let me know. But anyway, not to make a big long commercial, if you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, you guys have yourselves a wonderful day, and yeah, keep your eye on the channel. Got some cool stuff coming up real soon here. I've got a couple of interesting winter videos for this car, as well as our little smart electric drive coming up. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.